Hello, tiny friends. Welcome back to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene. Today I'm going to show you how I created these real miniature tea bags. I'm going to create a canister from scratch. I'm going to fill that little teacup, and I'm going to create that little bowl of lemons. So lots to do today, and I am super excited because I've been wanting to show you these tea bags for a while now, a long time now. So thank you all for being here with me. Let's get started. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to be using some of my leftovers from the first time that I made the tea bags. And I actually made the tea bags as a gift to one of my purchasing friends for the purchase that she was making. But since then, I have learned so much, and it hasn't even been that long, tiny friends, but I'm going to upgrade them just a little bit. You can see that the string on these is pretty thick, and I never even bothered to pull the strings apart and use single pieces. So I'm going to be scaling that string down today to size. I'm also going to be using uh, red rose tea. Now, red rose tea was Grammy's favorite tea, so we always have it in the house. We have plenty of it. And honestly, tiny friends, this tea is so good. It's such a good tea. It's a vintage tea. It's been around for ages. Um, I actually scanned the package in with my scanner into my computer and shrunk down the label. If you're able to do something like that, just be super careful when you unwrap it that you don't rip it. If you're not able to do something like that, maybe you could do an internet search and print out a free printable. And if you're not able to do a printout, then just create your own label, tiny friends. Just get really creative. Use markers, use what you have, use stickers, use decals, use rub-ons, whatever you have. Just get creative with what you have, right? So don't despair if you cannot print out a label. If you only have like a Microsoft Word program, I believe you can shrink images down in that program as well. I have an outdated version, so it doesn't work well for me. But I created a couple different labels and different sizes too because I was doing all this trial and error at the time I was creating these. And I was left over with a few different sizes and a couple different ones. So I'm going to try to use a couple of them today and try and use up some of this stuff that's been sitting around. Um, I am going to use this little canister here. It's a pretty good one. I like it. So it's already pre-made. I'm going to use it. Why not? I'm also going to make one from scratch so that I can show you how you can make your own canister. You don't have to make a canister. If you have a pre-made jar or something that you already have that's already made and you want to use that. Or you can add a label onto that as well. These ones happen to have a napkin or a paper towel over them that I decoupaged over it to try and give the canister some more texture. But with the one I'm making out of scratch, I will not be doing that. So it's not a necessary step. For the glues, you can use fabric tack or you can use tacky glue or any PVA glue. I'm going to be using tacky glue, but I just wanted to show you that you can use the fabric tack as well. I'm going to use this little shape that I found in my tidbits because it inspired me to create this type of canister, an octagon kind of shape. This is my little container of tidbits, and I have multiple containers like this. This is definitely worth saving for me, or if you're a miniature maker, because all these little pieces and parts and cutouts, these are just all leftovers from previous projects. This is something that we absolutely do not throw away as a miniature artist because we can use all these little pieces for details. We can make single little pieces using these little scraps. So this is something that is worth saving for me. This is what I call some of my treasure trash. I just cannot get rid of this stuff. This is absolutely no-no if you are a miniature maker. Do not throw none of this stuff away. And I'm going to show you some of it to show you exactly what I do not throw away. But we use this stuff. You will use your scraps. It's very like vital and crucial to keep when you're making miniatures, tiny friends. So I'm going to be using some some sewing thread, and it's the perfect scale for string. It's super cheap. Most of us have it in our homes. You don't have to worry about pulling the strands apart. So if you have some, use that. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of what I have in here. I love this stuff. I've got some cardstock. That's a great piece that, it's got, I can do multiple things with that. These little pieces here came from one of Ara Bentley's kits. I always save these little pieces because I can use them as templates. And if I need a shape or if I need to trace one of these types of shapes, I have a template. There are also little pieces still stuck on there that I haven't used, so I can use those on something else. So I love saving these little pieces from kits. I have a piece here that still has plenty of cardstock on it. It looks like I was tracing something on it before. But just to show you guys, do not throw these things away. Don't throw your scraps away. You can see where I was tracing something on it. I don't know what it was. I have some circle shapes. If I need to trace out some circles or use those pieces, if I have to cut them into pieces and parts. Here's a plastic button. I do not know why that's in there because I do have a button tin, but I was thinking of using this for a lamp or some sort of a base. So definitely keep all of your cutouts, all of your scraps, all of your little tiny pieces. I have some postcards in here from the luggage sets that I was making, and I know I have a few of them in here somewhere. You can always modify these little pieces. I don't know why this earring is in here. It's probably because I get lazy and I just start throwing things in these containers. I have a little tassel, all these little things. I have Q-tip heads, the cotton heads from the Q-tips. I don't know why I have those yet, but I might need them later on down the road. And those actually came off of the legs to the antique Dollar Tree table that I made. So just to show you, I know it's silly, but it's really not. It's a crucial thing for us miniature makers. I'm going to be using some of this brown craft paper today. You're going to want to use, if you're going to make a container, you're going to want to use a thicker type of craft paper. You don't really want a thin type, so any kind of cardstock or chipboard or even construction paper would work. But because I'm going to go with that little shape, I need to have a piece of craft paper on the thinner side. So that it can go around all the corners of this piece. So I do have a thinner piece of this brown craft paper, and I believe some of this stuff came from the inside of wrapping paper rolls. Now they're starting to use the brown craft paper rolled up instead of the cardboard rolls like the paper towel rolls. So if you're buying gift wrapping paper, look inside the rolls and see if they're the brown craft papers. Comes in really handy for the miniatures. I've got some little strips here, and this one's going to be a good one. I'm going to attach it to the lid of this canister and create a lip. I'm also going to add one around the bottom for added detail. So you can see, tiny friends, these things are handy to keep around, especially for your detailing. So to begin with, I've cut my strip about 3/4 inches wide. Size is going to vary according to what type of canister you're making. And right now I am just making some markings where these corners are so that I can go in and create some light folds. So this way my little craft paper will wrap around that shape and hold a little bit easier for me because I've already tried to wrap it and it wasn't working. It wasn't holding. It didn't look right. It looked like a round cylinder on a octagon bottom. So I believe it needs its corners so that it looks a little more accurate. So that is what I'm doing here. And I'm just going to take my metal ruler. I'm going to go right across to where I made my pencil marks and create those light folds. Okay, so once my folds are created, I can begin to glue this piece around the shape. I'm going to begin with one side. I'm going to let that sit for a little bit, and then I'm just going to repeat it all the way around and trim off the excess. Now I'm taking the container and I'm creating the lid by flipping the container upside down and tracing the top part. I'm going to trace about 5 of these shapes and cut them out. And then I'm going to layer them together, glue them all together so I have a thicker piece and attach a little thin strip around the sides of that, and that will create my lid. So doing the same thing I did with the canister, it's the same technique. Once you learn this technique, you can create all kinds of things. That's how I created the trays. It's the same technique, the way I created the antique trays. So you can create several different miniatures with this technique. I've created hats with this technique. So once you learn this technique, tiny friends, you are good to go as far as your imagination will take you. So for the tea bag, you're going to snip off the top, and this is where you're going to be super careful because we're going to open it up and empty out the tea. Now when you open it up, you just be really careful because both of your ends will be opened. So grab yourself a container and dump out all the tea. You're going to be left with a tube-shaped bag, and it's going to look like this. And we're actually going to use the folded sides as part of the miniature tea bag. And I am making 2 canisters, so I'm going to double what I'm making. We're going to cut a strip off. If you're just making 1 canister, you just need to cut 1 strip off. So find where your folded sides are, and you're going to go up about 1/2 of an inch and cut a strip all the way across, about 1/2 of an inch. We're going to trim it down some, but you want enough room to work with. You want to make sure you have enough material because it's going to be so small, and we're going to be adding tea. So we'll be trimming it down 2 different times later on. And what I'm really going to be doing, tiny friends, is just reconstructing this tea bag in miniature form. So when I first began, what I did was I took a tea bag and I took it apart to see how it was constructed, how they put it together, and I pretty much just inspected the whole thing. And then I thought, okay, I can reconstruct this in miniature form, and I can also use the same bag. So that's how I started doing this. So once you get your strip cut, it's going to look something like this, where it will be opened on one end, and you can see here it's opened on one end. You can probably get 2 more strips off of the remaining bag if you're making a whole bunch, but 1 strip will give you 5 tea bags, and I feel like 5 tea bags is plenty for one of these little canisters. So you can probably get like 20 tea bags from 1 bag. Okay, so you got your strip, and the next thing we're going to do is measure out your sizes. So I'm going to measure down a little over 3/4. And I am so bad at my measurements, tiny friends. So if anybody knows what this measurement is, please let me know in the comments below. I am going right in between the 3/4 measurement and the inch measurement. There's a big line right in the middle. That's where I'm going. So again, if anybody knows that measurement. Okay, so what I'm doing is once I get my marking down, I'm sliding that pencil mark up to line up with the inch mark that's above it. And then I'm just measuring down. So you can see here I'm sliding that mark up to the measurement or to the 1 inch measure line, and then I'm going down. And that was just the easiest way for me to make my measurements. Get your measurements done, cut out your pieces. You'll have a total of 5. And then you can take your glue. If you do not have one of these precision tips, use a toothpick, put some glue on a card or a scrap piece of paper, use a pin, anything, something fine and little, and just run it right along the inside of the paper, right along the two sides, the two edges. So you're going to stay on the inside and you're just going to go right on the edge. And then you can just pinch those two pieces closed. You'll be left with a little pouch. So it'll be open on the top, it'll be folded on the bottom, and your two sides will be glued shut. You're going to add your tea. Now you just want a little pinch, just like I'm doing right now, just a tiny little pinch, maybe 2. That is it. If you think that you do not have enough, you have enough. Most of these I put too much in, so when I go to trim them down, I am going to be pouring a lot of them out. So this right here is too much. And I'm going to show you a comparison in a little bit. So you just want a little sprinkle, maybe 2 little sprinkles. I wouldn't even say a full pinch. Make sure you have your tea along the bottom. You want to take your scissors and start to trim the top off. So you're going to go down about 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to trim about half of that off. So what I'm going to do is just make a pencil mark right where the 1/4 inch is, or you can pencil mark it right in the middle of that because you're going to be cutting exactly half of that off. If you need to measure it, I'm only measuring it this first time just to show you, but I pretty much eyeball it the rest of the times because I know I'm just cutting it right in half. So just trim that top half off, and I'm actually holding it by the tea so that the tea doesn't go anywhere or spill anywhere. You want to make sure you shake your tea all the way down to the very bottom so that you don't get it stuck in your glue, and just run a little bit of glue right from corner to corner. So make sure you get in that little corner so that none of your tea seeps out, and just run that glue right along the inside, right along the edge to meet the other corner. And then you can pinch it closed. So once you have your pouch closed, you'll have a tube-shaped bag, just like in the beginning with the bigger bag. And it'll look like this. So now I'm going to do the second trimming, which will be from the top of the tube. Now we have to shorten the tube because now the tubes are too long. So when you do this part, you want to trim about 1/4 of an inch down, and you want to hold your tea and be careful that it doesn't pour out. Of course, I have too much tea in these bags, so I am going to be pouring most of them out, but you just want to be careful that it doesn't dump all over the place on you, because it's going to be harder to get that tea back in here from the side opening, unless you have a little scoop or something like that. So just be super careful about that. We're going to end up folding the tea bag over like so, just like the real one. So once you snip off the top, and you're going to snip about a quarter of it off, maybe a little less than a quarter. Maybe, is that an eighth of an inch? I'm not even sure. I'm not even going to just snip about a good section of that off. And you don't have to worry about closing the single side. You're just going to go ahead and put some glue right in between the two pieces of the bag. So right in the middle there. And you want to do about half of that section. You don't want to stay just along the edge. You want to go down a little bit further, because when you lay your thread in there, you want your thread to lay down pretty good in there so it doesn't slip out of there on you. So just get a good amount in there, and then take your thread, stick your thread right down inside, get it in there pretty good. It may take a little bit. Thread is so thin, but just have some patience and stick it right in the very middle of the bag, and make sure you get it in there pretty good, probably down to where the tea sits. So that's about how much glue you want to put in there too, or as far down as you want to go with the glue. And then just take that thread and stick it all the way down to about where the tea is, the top of the tea. Once you get that thread in there, just pinch your bag closed. Okay, so this is what it should look like. You have your little tiny tea bag, and you can leave it as is. I like to trim mine, but this is an example of the tea getting stuck in the glue. So I'm still going to use this because this will make a great filler bag, and I can sit it in the canister. Just be aware and be careful that when you are gluing your top part, your tea is settled along the bottom so it doesn't get stuck in your glue. And here is the amount that you should have in your tea bag. You can see there's a big difference, right? So here are all the tea bags. So now I am going to start to trim the corners off. And like I said, you can leave them as is, but I like to trim my corners off and make it look like a little tag. If you decide to do this, just be very careful you do not snip your thread off. I did do that, but again, I can use that tea bag as a filler bag and nobody will ever know. So carefully snipping off the corners. This is just optional, and they'll look like this. Okay, so you can take your tea bag and just give it a little push up and kind of shape it, make it a little more full looking, a little more plump. That's all I'm doing here. So once you get your tea bags completed, you can go ahead and shape them up. Now moving on to the tags. I'm using some leftover tags, and what I did was take an image of a rose and shrunk it down. Either I found this in one of my programs or I actually did an internet search. If you're unable to do that, create your own tag, add a little sticker, use your markers. If you want to make a rose or a flower bud, you can just add a few little dots and a couple little smudges on the side for the leaves. Just get really creative so you do not have to have an image to print. You can definitely, these are so small, you can definitely just use your markers or a pen or something like that and create your own little tag. You want your piece of paper to be about 2 squares in length, so a nice little rectangle. And I'm actually going to trim this down on the 3 sides just to create a little white border that goes right around the rose. You want to keep the piece long enough to where you can actually fold it over onto itself and create a little square. So you have two sides or a double piece of the square. So trim off any excess that you need so that you have this tiny little square and fold it over onto itself. So it's like a little card. I like to snip the very tips off of the corner. I'm talking very, very tips. So they kind of look like this. I just like to remove that pointy corner. I know you can't really see it because of the light, but it's just a little folded piece that kind of looks like a square card. Okay, so take your glue and put some glue on one side on the inside. Lay your thread in the very middle of it, and then you can fold it over on itself and close it up. You want to make sure that you pinch it really good, nice and tight when you close it together. And then this is where I like to go in and snip off the very corners. I'm talking the very tip. Not as much as I did with the tea bag. So I'm just doing a very slight trim on the corners just to get those points off. And again, that's just a preference. You can leave them as is. I just prefer to have those corners off of there. And this is what it should look like. Okay, so this is the canister. It is all ready to paint. I'm going to paint both of them up. I just wanted to give you a good look at what it looks like now that it's completed. It's a little wonky because the shape of the foam piece was a little off, but it's okay. It's going to work. I gave all of these pieces a white base coat because I'm going to be using some silver and gold metallic paints, and I'm also going to use an aqua color, and I want the shade of these colors to be true to their shade. So that is why I gave them a white base coat. I didn't want any unnatural undertones. I wanted them to have their natural undertones. So I base coat them with white. I'm painting this one gold. I'm also painting the strip that goes around the bottom gold. On the octagon, I'm painting the inside silver, and I am painting the cap, the lid, silver. The aqua that I'm using is just a cheap acrylic paint from Craftsmart, but it's a really pretty color. I love this color. So I thought it would be really nice to just paint both of the canisters this aqua blue. It's kind of like a vintage color. So I'm going to give them a couple coats of this color, and then I am going to give them a couple coats of a satin varnish. Okay, so I'm putting the labels on them, and if you're putting labels on your canisters or your jars, you just want to make sure that you cover the back side of the label completely with glue, and then make sure your label is nice and flat, as flat as you can get it on your container. So I'm just adding the labels. This is what they look like. I absolutely love these little containers. Now I'm going to coat them with a couple coats of my satin varnish, and this is by Duraclear. I prefer to use a satin varnish versus Mod Podge, just because that's what it's made for, so it doesn't get sticky according to the temperature or later on down the road due to storage. Now I'm going to make some lemons, and I'm using this sculpting tool for texture on the lemon peel, I'm just rolling it around in different directions just to give it a little bit more realism. I'm going to go in and define one end. This is the end where it actually gets picked off of the tree. So sometimes, you go in the store and you look at the lemons, you'll see the side where it actually gets pulled from the tree is more of a roundish and maybe a little like a lump or a little bulge instead of kind of like a pointy. And then sometimes you'll see the little hole or the little indent in the middle of that end from where it was actually hanging on the branch. So I'm going to create that just to give it a little bit more of a realistic look. I am also going to add a little tiny bit of green shading with my chalk pastels, just a very small spot, like a hint on this end of the lemon that I'm working on. Sometimes when you go in the stores, you will see a little bit of green on the lemons, and that's what I'm going to do to these. Okay, so the lemons are baked and they are completed. I just wanted to give you a closer view at their details. I am not sure if you can see the green on the camera, but you can definitely see it in person. I also made a little wedge because I am not very good at making polymer canes, so I couldn't make a lemon slice and make it look realistic. So I just decided to make a little wedge, and I'll put it face down so you can just see the rind sticking up in the cup. I'm also going to have to trim it down just a little bit. But now that I have my lemons, I need to find a bowl to put them in. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, so my good friend Ara sent me a set of nesting bowls, and I'm using the smallest one. I'm also using this mint colored nail polish. I'm trying to go for that milky green glass. Two things when you're using nail polish on 3D prints or pretty much anything. You want to start off with a thin coat because you're most likely not going to need more than 2 coats. So start off with a thin coat and do not have your fan on because it dries the nail polish so quickly that you can't get the first coat on before it starts to get tacky on you. So now I'm going to make the tea. The old lady's going to need a nice hot cup of tea while she is soaking her feet in the basin. So I'm using this UV resin. It's not the greatest brand. I thought I was ordering a different kind and I wasn't paying attention. But this works just as well. It's just not a quality that I prefer. So I'm going to I have these little medicine cups. I have tons of them. And I use them for my resin mixing. So I'm just going to put about 2 or 3 drops, not a lot. And I'm going to take my chalk pastels. I'm just adding a very little bit. Tiny friends, if you're using chalk pastels or pigments, add a very little bit at a time because you can always add more. And so that is how much I added. I'm hoping that's not too much. You can always add more, but you can't take away. So that looks like a good tea color. I'm going to go for it. I just got lucky because I felt like I added too much. So what I'm going to do is 2 rounds. I'm going to fill it halfway, so about 3 drops of the resin will go in here, and then I'll add the tea bag and cure it. I really hope you guys are enjoying this video today, tiny friends. If you are, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking. If you're subscribing, don't forget to hit that top bell notification button to be notified every time I upload a new video. I'm going to add this little tea bag and cure it and come back and finish it off and add the lemon. Now, I'm going to have my 1K video up on Monday, which is 2 days from now, which I believe is the 17th. So if you are seeing this video today, then in 2 more days, I will have my 1K video up and we'll talk about that giveaway. I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the miniature community here on YouTube. I really thought I was going to have at least another week, but my numbers are growing quite fast and I'm almost afraid to go in and check them because they're just moving up so quickly. So I do not have at least a week. So that video is coming up in 2 days. Make sure if you are subscribed, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. You have to be a subscriber to get in the entry. Make sure you watch that video, tiny friends. I want you all, as many as possible, to get into that giveaway. So my little bowl is done. I have coated it with a glossy clear top coat. I still used a nail polish for that. And now I'm just using tacky glue to glue my lemons into place so they don't fall out, move around, and they can be permanent. I have filled my canisters with the tea. You can see the old lady's tea with the lemon wedge in it. And I'm going to show you what everything looks like. Give you a good view of that. So for this octagon canister, I like the way it looks with the tag hanging out. It just shows you that there's tea inside. So I just put a little dot of tacky glue and glued that tag down. That won't be removable, but the rest of the tea will. So here is a look at everything all finished and completed. The little square tin will be going in the giveaway. So the granny will keep the octagon canister, and I did not glue the tag to the side of the canister, but whoever wins this little canister can very well do that if they choose to. I left that up to the winner, and just to give you an idea and some inspiration. I just like the way that it looked. And Miss Ara Bentley from Bentley House Minis, thank you so much for sending me that set of nesting bowls. This little one came in so handy and is now a lemon bowl. So thank you so much for that. Thank you everybody for subscribing and being here with me today. I'm so grateful and super excited for my next video coming up. So definitely tune in on that. And tiny friends, you all have a lovely day. I will see you all on the mini side, which is technically in 2 days. Bye-bye.